Good morning. When I was elected, I made it a point to personally respond to crime scenes. It's not something that I enjoy doing, but I think it's important to be there not only to support the investigations, but also the victims' families. And I have to say that what I saw Monday night, having grown up near that restaurant, as many of you know, my office last year was right down the street. Having patronized that restaurant many times in my life, that scene was nothing less than horrifying. Monday night, June 22nd at approximately 9:30 p.m. at the Applebee's in St. John's, Missouri on St. Charles Rock Road, there was a shooting with 3 victims. Kimberly Penton, who was fatally wounded, Lakeisha French, and our Lydia Buford, who were both injured but are still alive, fortunately, but are receiving treatment, in which we don't have any updates with respect to their conditions as well, but we know that they're both in serious condition. I do want to acknowledge with this incident the cooperation between not only our office, but the St. John Police Department, St. Anne Police Department, Breckenridge Hills, who responded, as well as the St. Louis County Police Department, who did such a thorough job in processing the crime scene, and then also the St. John officers who apprehended the suspect. And I'd also like to single out a few responders as well. Breckenridge Officer Fellows, who rendered aid to Miss Finch, and 2 St. John's officers, Hitchcock and Griffin, as well as Captain Dorian Meeks of the Kinloch Fire Protection District, who rendered aid to our Lydia, and in all likelihood saved both of their lives. The individual who we charged is Courtney D. Washington, whom numerous witnesses have identified as the assailant in this horrible shooting. My office has charged Courtney Washington with 6 counts, murder in the first degree, 2 counts of assault first, and 3 counts of armed criminal action. Our investigation is still ongoing, and there is a possibility of more charges forthcoming. Alongside me today are Chief Connell from St. John, from the St. John Police Department, as well as Kinloch Fire Chief Kevin Stewart, and they'll both say a few words, and then after that we'll take a few questions. Of course, our condolences go out to the families of Kimberly Penton. I can only imagine their pain. To Lakeisha Finch and our Lydia Buford, if you're listening, keep fighting, and we'll keep praying for you. With that said, I'm going to bring Chief Connell up, and he's going to make a few statements. Again, Chief Stewart will then as well, and then we'll take a few questions. Chief Connell.
So thank you, Mr. Bell, and thank you for coming here. Basically, I want to say this is a day that, as a nation, we know that law enforcement is looked down upon. But I want to tell you that our men and women in law enforcement, especially here in St. Louis County, has not given up, and we're still out there serving the communities as we should be, because that's the oath that we've taken to do. I'm extremely proud of my department, as well as the 10 other agencies that came and supported us that night, because this call first came out as an active shooter, and we came together as a police community and a first responder community to basically take care of this situation as we should and as we've trained. We put all differences aside to come in and do our job the way we're supposed to. If it wasn't for the quick actions of 2 of my officers who were there in under 30 seconds on scene, and Captain Meeks from the Kinloch Fire Department, there's no doubt in my mind that firefighter or Lydia probably wouldn't be here today. And I really need to commend those men that made those quick decisions and saved her life. Also for Breckenridge Hills Officer Fellows, who applied a tourniquet to Lakeisha, which helped save her life as well. As well as the 13 officers that arrived there in less than a minute and 30 seconds on scene from the surrounding municipalities that we work well together with. They secured the scene, contacted all the witnesses, set up a perimeter, and then we immediately started a search as we gathered information on the suspect. If it wasn't for the help of all these other agencies working together in collaboration with St. John, and our detectives doing a great job interviewing the witnesses and finding out who this person was, we probably wouldn't have taken the subject into custody by morning. I know I threw it out there that I was confident that we'd have the subject in custody by morning. That confidence came because I know how the municipalities work, and I know how my detective bureau, they take the bull by the horns, and they dig deep, old-fashioned police work, and they do a great job to serve our community, to protect our community, and it proved to be true, and I hope that everybody sees that. The reliance that we have in our community police force here in St. Louis County is amazing, and we serve well. And that's basically the statement that I want to say today, that despite everything that's going on, we won't quit. We will not leave behind the citizens of St. Louis County, and we're going to keep doing our job. And our hearts and prayers go out to the families of the victims. You know, situations like this are always tragic, heartbreaking, and it's something that we have to bury deep inside of us as police officers to continue to be professional and do our job so that we don't let anything get in our way of our mindset and our reactions and our thinking, so that we can bring everything to fruition and bring justice to the victims. So, thank you.
On Monday evening, there was a tragic event that occurred at the Applebee's in St. John, in which Miss Kimberly Penton was tragically killed. My firefighter, Our Lady of Bufford, was tragically shot and is fighting. And another young lady was senselessly shot and seriously injured. My comments echo those of Chief Connell, and I want to say that I am extremely grateful for the quick actions of Officers Hitchcock, Officer Griffin, and Captain Darion Meeks. Without the actions of those three individuals, we'd be having a very different conversation right now concerning firefighter Our Lady of Bufford. There is no doubt in my mind that the actions of those individuals saved her life and gave her the fighting chance that she has at this moment. Most importantly, this strikes home to me on so many different levels. The Kinloch Fire Protection District is connected to the Penton family by way of service. The Penton family provides a service to the Kinloch Fire Protection District through their personal business, taking care of our uniforms. And so we want to let the Penton family know that the Kinloch Fire Protection District stands with them. We give our most sincere condolence. You have our 100% support. We love you. If there's anything that we can do for you, George, please reach out to me. We are so sorry for your loss. I also want to commend the law enforcement partners that we have here in St. Louis County and their quick responses and actions that they took responding to this horrific incident. I also want to thank Prosecuting Attorney Wesley Bell for the great work that his office is doing in bringing Mr. Washington to justice and holding him accountable for his actions. Our Lady of Bufford is a very bright, very strong, smart young lady. She's a fighter, and she's fighting. And I just ask the community to continue to stand with us in prayer as we continue to allow God to heal Our Lady and bring her home to us and bless her with the full recovery. just want to ask the community to think about this tragedy that has happened. There comes a time where we have to think about things as a people, and what can we do to do things better? Violence is not the answer. Put the guns down. Love your neighbor. Love the next person. This didn't have to happen. We will work together with Chief Connell and Attorney Bell. We're going to get through this as a family of first responders, and we're going to get through this as a community.
So we'll take a few questions.
What was the suspect's motive?
At this point, you know, as I said earlier, the investigation is ongoing, and so we don't have any direct information. I can't answer that question at this point. Hopefully we can answer that sometime in the future, but as you know, in these kind of cases, we may not know, given the defendant's constitutional rights.
Are you guys still confident that the suspect did not know the victims?
My understanding is that that is the case, that there was no connection there, but you know, considering how early it is in the investigation, I can't say with certainty.
The release said that the suspect had a lengthy criminal history, but we weren't able to find anything. Can you elaborate on some of the things that he was charged with?
You know, I don't know if I would characterize it as lengthy. There were I think there were 1 or 2 convictions. There were a few arrests. The convictions were not for any, my understanding is not any violent crimes. There was something in St. Louis City, which he was on probation for. That probation was concluded, I believe, in 2014. Aside from that, I'm not aware of any convictions. I think there have been a few arrests, but that's the extent of it as far as what I know now.
Will your office seek the death penalty?
I mean, I think you already know my position on that. And so I think even in tough times, you don't compromise your values and integrity. And if this individual is convicted, he will spend the rest of his life in prison. So justice, our goal is to make sure that justice is served. Still early. Obviously, with any criminal case, you know, there's going to be steps that are followed, and if the court decides that that's necessary, or the defendant's counsel is looking at those types of things, and obviously they have a right to do so, and we'll deal with it as it comes.
Is there any sort of picture emerging about how things unfolded? Originally, it was reported that he went into the restaurant and then went out to the parking lot. I don't know if that was to get his gun, but have you been able to piece together a timeline? Was there anything said, or did he act funny? Did anybody kind of pick up on anything that this was coming to a boiling point?
I'm going to let Chief respond to that briefly.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. In an attempt to not disclose too much information because of the case, from what we understand at this point, he was seated in the restaurant near where the decedent and her friend Lakeisha was seated as well. We know that he was acting strange, quote unquote, in some way, so much that he even caused some alarm for Captain Meeks, who was seeing what was going on in the mannerisms of the suspect. I'm not going to go into too many details at that point for Mr. Meeks' reactions. But what we do know is that the suspect then left the restaurant, came back in, and as he did, he brushed up against one of the waitresses. And I'm not going to give the exact quote, but basically that things were about to get real. And at that point, he turned and shot the first victim. And as he shot the first victim, he turned to walk away, walked about 3 or 4 steps, turned back around, and shot the second victim in the same booth. I don't know at what order, because I haven't seen the video of which victim was shot first. After those 2 shots were fired, the suspect then walks to the complete opposite side of the restaurant where he sees our Lydia, and she was wearing a Kinloch Fire Department polo that had the fire department emblem on her shirt. And she was also wearing her firefighter training pants, I guess. And at that point, the suspect turned the weapon onto our Lydia, where he fired one shot. And it's believed, just because of the wounds that she suffered, that she had tried to block the wounds, and the shots, or that round went through both of her forearms before it penetrated the right side of her head. At that point, witnesses say that the suspect just calmly walked out of the restaurant, walked over to his vehicle, got in, and just calmly drove off. He didn't drive erratically, just drove off calmly. At this point, that's all that we have, or that I can say. But does that answer your question?
Before he said things are about to get real, did he say anything else to anybody?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. That's correct. There were individuals at the scene that knew of his identity. That also led to the confidence that I had that we would get this individual before morning. I also have to say that the quick arrest was the culmination of all the municipal law enforcement agencies coming together. St. John had no previous contact with the shooter. However, another agency, which was St. Anne, had contact with this individual for a misdemeanor crime recently. As my detectives started interviewing the witnesses, they were feeding the information out into the network with all the adjoining municipalities. St. Anne picked up that information. They remembered the name. When the shooter switched into the second vehicle to leave the area, one of the proactive St. Anne officers actually spotted that vehicle and contacted St. John, at which time we went out and set up a perimeter and waited for contact. So that's basically how it unfolded. But there were several key municipal law enforcement agencies that were working with us with the leads that we were developing. And again, it's just good old-fashioned police work.
Could you give us some insight on the second vehicle? Why would the shooter have the second vehicle?
What I can say, if it's so, what I know is that the vehicle he left in did not belong to him, and that he drove to an area where his own vehicle was at, and then
Almost like premeditated?
I can't say that.
Yeah, and keep in mind too that this still is an ongoing investigation, so there's still facts that we're trying to uncover, and I don't want to make statements that, you know, when we're not sure. So keep that in mind too. So we got time for like one or two more questions. Go ahead, Joe.
Kind of a three-part. How many shots were fired approximately inside the restaurant? What kind of gun? And did he own it legally?
Chief, are you privy to that information?
Did you say how many shots were
Yeah.
fired? So some witnesses said 5. Oh, do you want me to address?
Oh, I guess. I think some witnesses are saying 5 or so.
But there were 3 shell casings found on the scene.
But there were 3 shell cases found.
What kind of gun was it?
I'm not. Do you know what kind of gun? Go ahead, Chief.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you. The caliber of the weapon that was used is believed to be a 9mm. And again, like Mr. Bell said, witnesses stated that some heard 5 shots, but there were only 3 shell casings found at the scene. And you know, as we know, and probably some of us experienced, you know, some chaotic situations, some of those shots that they believe they heard could have been glasses falling, breaking on the ground, plates breaking as people were trying to run. So we don't know the accurate count. We're still reviewing the video to find out for sure.
Did he own or obtain that gun legally? Do you know?
No, at this time we don't know.
How many people were inside the restaurant?
There were a number, but we're still in the officers who responded to the scene and processed the scene did a good job of distinguishing the witnesses who had more significant, I guess, testimony, if you will, or of what happened, and those who did not, but we're still working through all that. So we got one more question, and hopefully not another.
Targeting women, or has that been said already at least?
You know, I can't say what was in his head. I can't say what was in his head, but what I can say is that there were numerous people in there, and only women were shot. So, you know, I can't say what was in his head, but I can say that we can look at the facts and respond to that. So. Listen, I love that you're doing the math, but I cannot understand you.
Is there a reason to think that Kinlock was maybe the target?
At this point, no, but we're still early in the investigation. So, thank you.
Mr. Bell, can I ask you a question about just the general season that we're in and your role as a prosecutor?
You know, at this,
would be the perfect time.
I think at this point, hold on, Kevin. Kevin, just.
Is there anything that you want to say to the protesters as a prosecutor where you would draw the line and they need to avoid certain activities that might be prosecutable charges?
Out of respect to the victims and their victims' families, I'm going to limit this press conference to discussing that issue. If you want to, if you have any questions, as always, and I think our offices try to be very transparent and open and answer questions when we can, reach out to us and we can get those questions answered. But right now we're going to limit this press conference to this tragic incident. So.
If anybody has any questions, they can just reach out to the office. Thank you.